So, for starters, while I am giving a presentation on the portfolios and demo reels, we do have a whole section of our website that's dedicated to the topic. Now, I've got it previewed over here on like a mobile device. So if you go to our website, which is careercenter.risd.edu, you'll find a link to portfolio and demo reel. And so, you know, it's always a good idea to just start with like, what is a portfolio? And that seems like a really basic question to answer. But, portfolios take many different forms, and especially here at Rhode Island School of Design, there's so many different majors. You could be talking about a physical portfolio for a fine art majors. It's still very common and common practice. Websites are very popular, of course, with many majors, all majors really, RISD, and that can have a mobile, platform or mobile formatting for online websites. The hard copy case is still common, and especially for those folks coming out of first year, you're definitely lugging that thing around campus, and that's still a reality of any creative or any artist. And then books are also perfectly customary, professional, especially when we're talking about the architecture majors, landscape, interior architecture. It is very common for them to use a hardbound book at times if you're in a situation where you can show your work in person. And some aspects that are not typically considered a portfolio would be a sketchbook, a sketchbook being like more of an experimental or a work in progress area of your creative practice, and Instagram. And we're going to talk about some exceptions for Instagram later in the presentation, but Instagram is not typically considered a portfolio because you're not able to like curate it in a way that's like really intentional. And then for reels, demo reels, for our animators and for our live action folks in the house, this is commonly a 1 to 2 minute compilation of clips that you've worked on that you consider to be your best clips, your best range of work that you're bringing to find those opportunities professionally. And common misconceptions here are that we wouldn't be talking about like a full-length movie. That would be too long for someone to be previewing as part of like a demo reel offering. And it's also not documentation. So we may shoot video of an installation or a time-based work that we have, but that really isn't considered a portfolio, demo reel. Demo reels are really meant to be excerpts of your motion work. So now that we've talked about like some of those basic things about like what a reel is, what a portfolio is, then we can start to address like what the best timing is. Like, when should you be starting your portfolio? So of course, like many of you, well, all of you applied to RISD and you all got in with a portfolio of work. And in your first and second year, portfolios, while a lot of people that I talk to, even first year students that come in and say like, oh, I feel all this pressure to make this portfolio that should be like professional grade, amazing portfolio. And it's like, wait a minute, you're in your first year. This is an experimental time for you. It's a time for discovery. And your portfolio should really reflect that. Your portfolio is a great way to capture these things that you're learning in your earlier years at RISD. And it also builds some excellent habits. So, when you're working so hard to keep up with the demands of studio and all the work that you're doing, sometimes it can seem like added pressure to have to like go and like grab that documentation and put it in some coherent form in a portfolio type of composite. And these are great habits to get into in those earlier years. And maybe like from junior year to graduation, you're starting to be more mindful of what your professional interests are. And you start to shape what you're doing in your portfolio or your demo reel to more resemble what it is that you're looking to do outside of school. And then, these are the building blocks of your career. And you'll carry these lessons that you've learned and these conventions that you've used into your professional career. We are so excited to see alums even from 20 years out that will come back to see us or come and be a part of an event, and they still have active portfolios that are available, even though they may be like very happily employed at a company, or they may be like very well established as a fine artist. They're still keeping that alive and keeping it current. And so, when we're talking about portfolios and the popularity of online portfolios specifically, there are a lot of options available to you when you're looking to publish your work. Common A very common platform for RISD folks has been Adobe Behance. The platform has been around for a very long time, and just so happens that we have a dedicated school pull down on Behance that you can see demonstrated here. One of the advantages of this pull down, by the way, is that for someone like an employer or like a curator who's looking for talent, they're able to look at the school and they're able to look at people that are featured on the site in a very easy way to get like a visual overview of the talent that's here at the school. We've also seen that there are alums that are very well established out in the world, still maintaining a presence on Behance, even to this day. And to get there, the website URL for this is behance.net if you want to check it out. I'm going to do QR codes for each of these things just to try to make it easier for y'all. So you can take advantage of that if you wish. I'll also be like posting the recording of this, and you'll all get a link to it if needed. So don't stress if you're not catching on to these things. Adobe Portfolio, it comes along with your license to Adobe Creative Suite, and you can definitely take advantage of that. I would consider that to be a more customized solution compared to Adobe Behance. It gives you more creative control. And of course, the URL is portfolio.adobe.com. Cargo has been very popular with RISD folks. The Cargo platform did reach out to RISD with a free code that you can all use to get a free license to use Cargo on their site. It has kind of a similar feel to Behance in that it has like has some presets for design layouts, and also has like a communal, forum aspect to it. The code, if you're interested in using Cargo, is at the bottom here, underneath the QR code. And you can also reach out to us anytime and we'd be glad to send it to you. One note about Cargo, though, is that they're very generous to offer this to students. However, of course, like once you graduate, they're not quite as generous about giving you a free license. So, it's one of those things that anything that you take on, you want to just consider like, how are you going to maintain this after graduation? So just want you to be aware of that. We don't want anybody to be surprised. And then other common platforms are Wix, and Wix has plans that start at $17 monthly. Carbon Made is another excellent platform, and that starts at about $9 monthly. And Squarespace, I'm sure everybody's heard of that, and very popular, and that's starting at $16 monthly. And Portfolio Box, this is an interesting platform because it does offer some selling features. So you can actually sell your work through the platform in addition to having a portfolio, and that starts at $10 monthly. Now, that was a whole lot of platforms that we went through very quickly. I just wanted to give you guys a sense of the variety of platforms that are available. It's by no means like complete. There are many more to find. We do field questions all the time about like, well, which platform is best? And honestly, it is really a personal answer. What's most important about the portfolio platform isn't really like the special features or the kind of design aesthetic. It really has to do with how easy is it for you to maintain, especially when you're sitting in this room and you're students and you're so busy with your work. You don't want to be investing extra time in laying things out in a complicated way. It should feel almost effortless for you to go in and publish work to your portfolio site. Another thing is that if any of you are in here and you're not aspiring web designers, there is zero pressure on you to have a fantastically custom looking website. Using an out-of-the-box website and posting your work, whether you're doing ceramics or you're doing architecture or you're doing graphic design, as long as you're able to clearly show your work in an effective manner that's efficient and easy for you, that's the best platform. So please do keep that in mind, okay? How are we doing? Any questions so far? Cool. All right. So, we've talked about the various types of, the kind of the what are the portfolios? What are some of the options with platforms? And now we're starting to edge into like, all right, authoring the thing, like creating your portfolio, making it your own. How are you going to represent yourself? And a best way to do this is to look for inspiration. You're in an amazing place here at RISD, and there's so many points of inspiration just among your fellow alums and among your fellow classmates. And so we've picked out a few sources for you to consider. Alumni News is a great channel for seeing what your fellow alums are doing out there in the world. I've got a preview of some of the news feed happening over there on the right. And the way to view the news is through the RISD website, and it's risd.edu/news/alumni-stories. It's a great way to see what your accomplished alums are up to. And I'd mentioned Behance, and I'd mentioned that how professionals and curators and employers can go onto Behance to find talent. Well, by the same token, you can list the projects that are on Behance by discipline. So you can see here, I'm selecting industrial design, then you get like a preview or an overview of all the different industrial designers from the school that have work to see in Behance. So this can be a great way to see what people are up to and the way that they're presenting themselves. And for every project that you view in Behance, you're also able to go to the source, like the profile page for each of these designers or artists. And many of them have links to their own portfolios. So this could be students, this could be alums, but basically, great place to find some inspiration among your peers. And many of us maintain creative Instagram accounts, and this is also a great platform for looking at your favorite artists. Here we've got John Key, an alum from the school. You could go and look at John Key's portfolio or any of the folks that you follow, go to their source sites and get some inspiration from them. And if you're really starting from scratch, probably the last thing you'd expect to see tonight at a creating your portfolio and demo reel presentation is LinkedIn. But here we are looking at LinkedIn because it's a great way to see an overview of your fellow alums by discipline. So here, let me make sure I know what it is. You can view the type of work that your alums are doing and click on that in the dashboard to see the people that are associated with that type of work down below. And so for any of these folks that are your fellow RISD people, as you look at their profiles, you'll definitely be able to find many of their portfolio sites and find inspiration. Of course, it's really nice to also see like where they're working and where they're showing. This can also help to legitimize the work that they're doing and have some influence over how you consider their work. So building your portfolio, considerations for whether you're a designer or a fine artist. So first thing that we need to consider is what to show. Curating your work to suit your career goals. So you want to be, we may do a lot of different things as part of our creative practice here at RISD. And an ideal scenario for your portfolio is to be demonstrating the things that you actually want to go and do. And many of us have professional motivations for why we're doing our portfolio. It's hopefully to find a job outside of school, or to find an internship, or to get into a gallery and to exhibit your work, or to become a part of an animation festival. Whatever these ambitions may be, hopefully you're demonstrating the work that you have that's most related to that pursuit. And so here we have actually a piece from Reiko Murakami, who's a FAV grad. So using that as the background for inspiration myself. So one element to consider is the first minute or the first impressions. So when you're submitting your portfolio as part of an application, this application could be for a job or an internship. It could be for a call for work or for a grant opportunity. Like whatever the situation is, you've got a hiring manager or a jury who is going through the many people that have applied for this opportunity at a very brisk pace. You know, these folks, and I do remember this from my own experience in the games industry, you are able to look very quickly at applicants, looking at their portfolios to get a quick sense of what their capabilities are, so that you can go through and kind of like pick out the people that are going to end up on your final list. So maybe if there's like, let's say that there's 100 applicants for a job, I might have a goal of getting this down to like 25% by doing a quick pass at the applicants. That's just an example scenario. Everyone is different, but if you're gearing your work and the work that you're showing to that, making that bold first impression, it's just a very effective way of accomplishing what you're trying to do, which is to get people's attention and to show them what you've got. So a part of what goes along with this principle is that we're aiming for quality over quantity. You know, you're not going to be getting any special kind of acknowledgement for having a mountain of work. And especially under the scenario that I have proposed, if you've got very limited time, then it's all about your quality. This is your chance to make a bold first impression. And you want to customize what you're showing that will fuel your career path. Now, I'd like to address this one bullet briefly. You know, I get questions all the time from students where they're saying like, my intended career path is X, but in studio, I have to do this other work, or I don't have control over what I'm able to work on. And I always reassure them that like, even though what you're doing in studio, you may not feel like is related to what you want to do professionally, these folks that are hiring managers that are checking out your portfolios, they have a very keen eye. They can see the potential in your work. So while you may not have exactly what they're looking for in terms of the work that they produce, if you show what you've got, that's the closest fit, that is the best way to handle this situation. And, you know, we also encourage you to show what you want to do as much as possible. You know, a common misconception that I hear from like graphic design students might be that they feel pressure to show something traditional like typography, even though they might hate it. You know, you can be great at typography, but it's okay if you don't like it, or, you know, whatever it is that your process is. If you're excellent in the wood shop in ID, but you're actually really way more interested in doing experiential design, that's totally fine. You don't need to show things that you're amazing at. You can just show the things that you're most passionate about and that you want to do in your career. And another common feature of excellent portfolios is being able to show your creative process. And so not just the finished image, but showing how you got there, showing some of the concept art behind your ideas. So I did address this one, you know, like a common concern that I've heard is I'm doing one thing, but I'm doing other things in studios. So I have explained that, show the things that have the best resemblance to what it is that you want to be doing professionally. And another concern that I've heard is like, I only have a small number of projects. I feel like I'm not ready to show my portfolio. I hear that one a lot. And really, if you've got two projects to show that you're proud of, that's an excellent start. That's a great way to be getting yourself out there and making first impressions. So coming back to Reiko, who's an alum, showing her portfolio for a second. She's a concept artist and she does commission work. She's worked in games. She was a former coworker of mine, and she was nice enough to share an insight about how she approaches portfolios. And so here she's really trying to get across the point that, you want to be showing the work that closely resembles what it is that you think the client wants to see. So that client, in her case, it could be someone that wants to commission her for a book cover, but this also universally translates to being a fine artist that's trying to get in with a curator who has a certain, type of work that they typically show. Or it could be for an architecture firm and the types of projects that they're looking for. It is a universal concept. And I do really appreciate that Reiko is reinforcing the concept of quality over quantity. As Reiko says, even 5 to 10 pieces that display consistent quality and focus, showing the work that you are most proud of, that you think is going to make the best impression. There's also an aspect of how you build and craft your portfolio, and it has to do with like how simple it is. I would say that simple can be a common goal for many people that are presenting their work. And what I mean by simple is that it is making a concerted effort to not have the portfolio features and whistles and, features get in the way of people viewing your work. It can be tempting for some of us, and I can say being really excited about different platforms myself, sometimes I do get really excited by certain features myself, but you want to try to keep a clear head about being intentional about making sure that your work is taking the spotlight. And by keeping it simple, it will hopefully allow that to happen. And so the goals, I would say, would be to have a curated presentation that's intuitive, like easy to use and focused. So the last thing we want to do is distract the viewer from things that are your main intention. You're trying to make a statement in a short period of time, and that's a common thing that I keep bringing up, but it is like a really important aspect of developing a successful portfolio. So for image quality, you know, if we're talking about physical objects or anything that needs to be photographed with a camera, you want to consider the lighting, making sure that it's very well lit with a blank or a background that is not distracting. Again, we're trying to like emphasize all of the focus and attention on the work and providing the finer details. So sometimes it may be showing a detail of your full-size image so that the viewer can get a sense of all aspects of what you're presenting. And, for any of us that have used a camera before and trying to get up close to some objects that you want to photograph, I'm sure you're aware of like you don't want to get so close that there's like lens distortion where it tweaks the perspective and makes it harder for people to understand what it is that you're showing. A common trick there is to like zoom in on your work with like a telephoto lens, and that tends to avoid any problems with lens distortion. And we were lucky to hear from an alum from ceramics, Anina Major. Anina is a ceramicist, and she has an amazing portfolio that I'd encourage you to check out if you get a chance. And so for Anina, she's really suggesting that you seek out professional help. Anina recognized that not only is she not like very experienced with photography, but it's not really like a direct interest of hers for her work, and she'd much rather enlist support from a friend who knows photography well to get good quality reproductions of her ceramics work. And I also did want to point out that there is Professor Clara Liu, who is also an alum, has amazing resources for portfolio development. And Clara does have a whole section on documentation. And I've got the QR code here. So for any of you that are comfortable getting behind a camera, you'd be able to get some excellent pointers from her. And so, additionally, when we're talking about like authoring and composing our portfolio, there's the background info. I've seen some awesome portfolios that have amazing reproductions of work. The photography is amazing, the lighting's awesome. It's a pleasure to go through, but if you don't have background info, it is missing a dimension of information that the viewers will find really important and interesting. Essentially, we're trying to answer people's questions before they, we're trying to answer people's questions before they have them. Like if we've got someone sitting alone in a room checking out your work, let's give them all the information that they need to make a solid impression of and evaluate your work for consideration for an opportunity. And so that can include not limited to, and also not all of these details, but you can consider things like if there's a title of your piece or your project, the year that it was created can be helpful so that they know the arc of your career, even if it's at RISD. Media dimensions, tools. Tools could be physical tools. It could be software that you used if you're a digital artist or designer. The design prompt, especially for industrial designers, seeing your design prompt and the research that you've done leading up to your solution, the focus group testing that you've done. This is all excellent, excellent information for your presentation. And as I had mentioned before, having your creative process is very important. We've heard from art directors that work in commercial studios, but we've also heard from uh, curators that are placing artists in shows in the fine art world. They want to know your process. They want to know what makes you tick, how you come to the conclusions that you do. And occasionally we'll hear some concerns from folks that say like, oh, I heard that I shouldn't include my creative process because it should just be the final work. And what I have said to those folks before, and I do feel very strongly about this, is that anybody that's viewing your work that does not want to see process does not need to go through the whole process. They can just focus on your finished work. But if they're looking for process and you don't have it, that is going to be a major bummer. Like they will want to see it. And so this, I'm sure some of you, I can see the gears turning. It's like, okay, so as you're going through studio and as you're doing your work, this means that you are capturing some of this process as you go. It's not just waiting until the finished moment to then like document all of your work. Um, and this includes anything from concept drawings to mood boards to prototypes, iterations. Seen some excellent time lapse recordings for 2D artists and painters. That can be an excellent complement to what you're presenting. And an alum of yours, Jason Bean, who's had a prolific career in games, also offered some guidance here for portfolio development. And so he is really all about the storytelling aspect of your portfolio. It's great to see well-presented process breakdown from initial prompt through reference research to early exploratory thumbs to finished work for that one piece. And so this really backs up some of what I've been saying about like sharing your process. I also, before we wrap up this section about authoring, I do want to mention a common pitfall, which is using a splash page. And, if we consider what I've been talking about with respect to making a first impression that's strong and efficient, having that first minute of exposure to someone, if you're starting out with a splash page, it really is only like a hurdle for the viewer to get into the good stuff or to get into your work. Um, I have, for that matter, seen very successful portfolios that will have a splash page, but for the purposes of an application, you may send a URL that takes the viewer straight into the work. So what I mean by that is like, if you've got like a concept art section of your website that you want to share with the employer, then send that URL for the concept art section so that the employer skips over your splash page. Okay. All right, so we've talked about like building your portfolio and those considerations. Now, I'd like to consider the presentation aspect of your portfolio. And so when we're talking about the printed portfolio, and this was a picture from an in-person event where we had curators checking out a student's work, having that work out on the table can be a very exciting experience for a curator or for an employer. Especially as things go more and more digital, if you were to show up to a meeting with someone, an interview, or if it was a studio visit, if you decide to provide a physical presentation, it can be really exciting and dynamic for the viewer. It's typically for fine art, we're talking about like 10 to 20 works if we're talking about like a senior or a more advanced artist. If you have less than that, that's fine. As I've said, like just focus on the quality. For design, we're talking about 6 to 12 projects. And as you're showing your printed portfolio, this gives you the added benefit of having like a linear experience or a storyline. So be thinking about like how you place the projects in your portfolio and how you sequence them and how that relates to what story you want to tell the viewer. Portfolio books, of course, they're also a common physical element in this type of setting and very common in the architecture industry. And so especially with architecture, it's very common to see like a table of contents in the beginning that will show like each of the projects in sequence and with page numbers. The resume is great to furnish on the first page of your portfolio. And we have heard, this is kind of some random nuggets of good information here. We hear time and again from firms that are coming to see portfolios that they love seeing fine art by the architect on the cover or embellished throughout their portfolio. It is one of those distinguishing factors for RISD architecture students and something that you should celebrate as part of your portfolio. When looking for print options, if you're not going to make it yourself, like do it yourself, you can seek publishers such as like Artifact, Uprising, and Blurb. And there are others, of course, but using like a good quality printmaker. And then for online options, if you're taking like a linear portfolio that you want to display online, Issue, which is issuu.com, is very, very useful. And Folio HD is also another platform. It's great to show linear PDFs on. When showing an online portfolio in a physical setting, it's great to be sharing it as part of your meeting with someone. Similarly to when you're showing a printed portfolio, you want to think in advance about like who you're meeting with and how you want to sequence what you're showing. You always want to be ready to present your work and to tell your story and go through your process in an interesting way. It's something that RISD folks do very well. You're in crit all the time. and you're talking about your work and getting feedback about it. So this should come second nature to you to just be yourself and share your work and your story. And for the demo reel, I've mentioned that having a 1 to 2 minute duration is important. At the beginning of your reel, it's common to have what's called a title card at the start and at the end. And this states your name, contact information, and some details about you. Um, Using subtitles, so we can see like number 4 there in the bottom right of the screen. Subtitles along with a demo reel breakdown, which is below. It's a great way to provide info on each of the clips as they appear in your reel. So for the viewer, they can look up the details about it. Because you're showing the reel and there's no real estate to put in lots of text, you can use that demo reel breakdown to provide the backing info. And that demo reel breakdown, sometimes you can have links to the full length piece if you've got it online so that people could check out your work. Common platforms would be YouTube and Vimeo. And if you've got secure content where perhaps it's something that you don't want people to just see in the general public, or maybe you've got some work that's under non-disclosure agreement that you've worked on for a client, there are some excellent secure platforms such as Dropbox, Google Docs, and Apple iCloud, where you could share that. And so a note from an alum, Tiffany Cooper, from Film, Animation, and Video, and here we're seeing a clip of one of her projects. So Tiffany mentions that you want to choose the strongest parts of your favorite projects that showcase your skills to reflect the type of works and clients that you want to attract. Have fun creating a new story or edit out of these clips, and remember to keep the reel short and sweet, like under 100, 1 minute and 30 seconds. And so, these things are universal themes, right? Like we've been talking about quality over quantity, and this is also reflected in reels. And beyond the portfolio, there are options with Instagram and LinkedIn. Public exhibitions are another great way, of course, to be showing your work. And it's a great environment for people to get the sense of what you're capable of. And keeping in touch is so important. So as you're making updates to your portfolio or your demo reel, this is an amazing opportunity to reach out to those folks that you're in touch with and let them know that you've got new material to be seeing. So this way you're keeping the conversation going with people in a very engaging way. In particular, there is a clip from a recent Art of Business talk featuring Margarita Lilla Rosa, who is an independent curator. So I'd like to play this short clip for you, which talks about Instagram.
So at the very least, you have to be findable, but I'm going to highly suggest you think about Instagram because the artists who I see not having Instagram, but having a social media presence are represented by galleries. And I see that very, very not often. And even those artists who I see only be like hashtagged in and they don't have a handle of their own, I do tend to forget about them a little bit more. So I would highly recommend to kind of put aside those feelings of social media is scary, social media defines my worth, and treat it like having a website.
So I really appreciate this point because I've typically gone into this talk mentioning that Instagram is not really meant to be a portfolio platform because in my mind, it was all about the curation aspect and the experience. But as Margarita has pointed out in this Art of Business talk, Instagram is an incredibly important tool in promoting yourself and in getting people's attention. And it's increasingly a platform that creatives are looking to get a quick sense of your capabilities. So even though it may be more time-based and it may be showing works in progress or your practice, that can be another really important and meaningful expression that can have influence over this process, you know?
So at the very least, you have to be fine.
So I do want to just point out that this was a talk from Art of Business series, and we do have another talk coming up tomorrow, as a matter of fact, which is how to write awesome contracts. And there's all different topics about your creative and art practice. And with any of the talks that we have, we do provide the recordings. And so I would encourage you to check it out. And this is on our website. It's under the events section of our website if you'd like to learn more. And so that does cover the content for tonight's program.